D. Megan and Donick 1025, 103 The Game, broadcasting from the Busy Bee Plumbing, Heating, and Air Conditioning Game Nashville studios, home of the $99 yearly Beehive membership, where the buzz is always about great service. Willie Donick, Derek Mason, and Adam Vingan here with you, joined in studio by our good friend Nick Frazier, who's doing a little tidying up because Chase and Big Joe brought the house down during their program, so much so that a poster fell during their final break, shattering glass all over the floor.
I'm blaming Joe Rexroth. Anything that happens in the studio, we're going to blame Joe Rexroth. He broke it by osmosis. He was at home and he thought about breaking it and it failed.
Thanks,
I know
Joe.
That. Yeah, thank you, Joe. Appreciate it.
Somehow I have to think this is somehow Rand Carthon's fault.
Joe, Rand, Carthon, Jarrett, throw them all in.
Exactly. Hey, it's all their fault.
Either way, it was a poster of the 1981 film Victory, starring Sylvester Stallone, Michael Caine, and Pele. The summary for those who have not seen the movie.
It's a great movie.
According to IMDb, as Allied POWs prepare for a soccer game against the German national team to be played in Nazi-occupied Paris, the French resistance and British officers are making plans for the team's escape. Now, I have never seen this movie.
You've got to watch it.
I had never heard of this movie until I was in here every day, and I assumed by looking at the poster that it was one of those movies that's so bad it's good. But you claim that it's actually a good movie.
Oh no, it is a great movie. Now, did it win Academy Awards or anything like that? No. Do you have to sort of go with some things like you do in a lot of Sylvester Stallone movies? Yes.
Just go with it.
But it is really well done, I think. There's some flaws in the plot, but if you are a fan of the Rewatchables, you ever heard of the podcast Bill Simmons does? They are all over this movie. I love that podcast of this movie because it hit home. I saw it in the theater when I was a kid, and it was one of those where you go out of there, you're fired up, you're cheering at the end of the movie. It's great. And so I am just devastated that the glass is shattered around this framed picture of Pele, Michael Caine, and Sly. This is not good. We've got to fix this. This is a sad moment.
The Rewatchables, not to be confused with The Expendables, another movie.
Right.
That's
the Rewatchables is the podcast.
Yes.
So I do wonder if we put it out on the text line, would we get some love for the movie Victory? Can I get some amens of thumbs up for Sly? And
I've never seen it.
It's a very unique. It's excellent.
Can we just appreciate, by the way, because now that I'm looking at the Expendables cast, which also stars Sylvester Stallone, let's just take a moment to appreciate this cast. Sylvester Stallone, Jason Statham, Jet Li, Dolph Lundgren, Randy Couture, Terry Crews, Stone Cold Steve Austin, Mickey Rourke, and Bruce Willis.
That's quite the ensemble.
Yeah. That's a eclectic group of individuals.
Yes, it is. But thankfully, Nick Frazier, he does everything for us. He literally holds this station together
with duct tape and
is sweeping up the glass so that yes, don't
and
forget the Gorilla Glue.
Yes,
but Nick Frazier doing yeoman's work, making sure that we do not harm ourselves in the making of this fine program. So thank you, Nick. Last night, the Nashville Predators were on the ice. It was an emotionally charged atmosphere in Tampa for Steven Stamkos' return for the first time as a visitor after 16 seasons with the Lightning. The Predators, stop me if you've heard this one before, fell behind 2-0, but tied the game, forced overtime, lost 3-2 in overtime to the Tampa Bay Lightning. But after the first TV timeout of the game, ESPN, which was carrying the game, ESPN Plus, it's important to differentiate between the two. ESPN Plus did not go to commercial break. They showed Steven Stamkos watching the tribute video. You could see him becoming a little bit emotional or trying to stop himself from becoming emotional. But an awesome scene in Tampa, and I've had the privilege, and Willie has as well, to see some of these emotional returns. When Shea Weber returned to Nashville for the first time as a member of the Canadiens, when PK Subban returned to Montreal for the first time as a member of the Predators. Those moments are really, really special. Stamkos had a good game last night. I would argue his best game as a member of the Nashville Predators, although it's still very early in his Predators career. But it certainly lived up to the hype in terms of what we were expecting the response would be for Steven Stamkos returning to Tampa last night.
Yeah, and even though it was ESPN Plus, I do think that they really put an emphasis on good coverage of that game. They put their best all-around team, I think, together of announcers to watch it. I think they did it right as far as covering the ceremony. It is a shame that it's on the streaming part and it wasn't on any of the ESPN channels, but that was well done for sure. And I thought Steven Stamkos did handle the emotions well and play a good game. And it's a good thing he did, because they fell behind again, as you mentioned. That's 6 out of the 9 games. They've been down 2-0. And in 5 of those 6, it's been 2-0 before the first half of the game is played. So they're constantly fighting from behind. And if you had told me going into the weekend, Friday, Saturday, Monday, 3 games in 4 nights, 2 separate trips, they're going to fall behind 2-0 at the midway point of all 3 games, I would be thinking disaster, right? But to go 2-0-1 in those games, I think is a big victory. It shows that they still don't have everything right, but they're getting that will back, that not reading the press clippings, right? They're fighting their way back into games. So the competitive edge is there. The cohesiveness is still a work in progress. Still has to get much better.
Yeah, you saw it on the second goal. I mean, it just seemed like it was a bad pass. Ended up being a turnover, and it just seemed like they were out of place. I'm not going to say they were not hustling, but it did seem like they were skating the mud on that second one. Now, the first one with Point, what is it, Brady Point?
Braden Point, man, he is something.
Yeah, man, he just beat 2 or 3 people. I mean, it was a great play, a great goal. He got UC to lean a little bit, and what do you call it? He top shelved it. Damn, that was a good goal, man.
Braden Point, I don't think he gets the credit he deserves for how good of a player he is. He is one of the best players in the NHL, and he puts up big numbers. But he plays on a line with Nikita Kucherov, who is a perennial MVP candidate. But Braden Point, very few players in the league are capable of doing the things that he can do, and you saw it on that
last
goal.
night. Yes, goodness.
Braden Point, by the way, is also not a first-round pick. He's one of those guys that they hit the jackpot on, being picked a little later than the top of the first round, and that just already. It's like it wasn't fair. They already had Stamkos and all the other guys they had from the dark years for the Lightning, where they did have high first-rounders. Then they add him to the mix, and it's a good thing they did. And about halfway through the game, the Tampa Bay brass, let's say, the hockey ops people who made the decision to move on from Stamkos, they're probably sitting there shaking their heads, nodding their heads, going, yep, we made the right call. This is why we kept the guys we did, and we moved on from Stamkos, because you can see why they kept Point, and they re-upped with Hedman and all these things. And then, to his credit, Stamkos kind of showed in the second period that he still got something left in the tank. And I think Stamkos is within a few centimeters per night of breaking through and starting to get the goals that he needs to get to be an effective player. But 5-on-5, they look, like you said, D-Mace, they look slow. Like it was 2-0 at the end of the first. They almost escaped to the end of the first, down 1-0, only because UC Saros was playing out of his mind. He has bailed them out the last couple of games, where early in the game they could have been blown right out of the water, but they were still within striking distance because of him. They look slow and not very cohesive. It got better as the game went on, for sure.
Saros has played really well over his past 3 games. The win against Boston, the win against Chicago, and the overtime loss to Tampa Bay. He has a .944 save percentage across those 3 games, compared to an .875 save percentage in his first 4 games. So a big rebound from UC Saros. By the way, the Gus Nyquist goal in the second period was the first 5-on-5 goal this season that the Predators have scored with Steven Stamkos on the ice.
Right. And that's what I was getting at. I think that's the wrap. It has been on the wrap on Stamkos that his days of being a dominant 5-on-5 player are over as far as dominant. I think he is still a dominant power play player. And I think he can still be a good 5-on-5 player. But I think that's where Tampa was going, yep, see, this is what we tried to tell you guys. That this is why we've moved on from Stamkos. But Stamkos, I don't say he got the last laugh because Tampa won the game, but he did show well last night in front of the fans there. Played a good game.
I do think one issue that we will need to continue to monitor, and I'm sorry to tell you this, Derek, is Tommy Novak, because he started the game, correct me if I'm wrong, Willie, he started the game as the second line center with Steven Stamkos and Gus Nyquist. But over the course of the game, Andrew Burnett swapped Novak and Colton Sissons. It was Colton Sissons who was on the ice with Nyquist and Stamkos when Nyquist scored the goal to tie the game in the second period. And it just feels like each time Tommy Novak gets an opportunity to center that second line, I'm mixing sports metaphors here, but he has been unable to take the ball and run with it.
Or the puck and skate with it.
Or the puck and skate with it. That's better. He has been unable to take the puck and skate with it. It's start and stop and start and stop. And I think we identified that second line center position as something that the Predators would have to monitor over the course of the season, and whether Tommy Novak was up to the task. And I just think that so far this season, he hasn't performed well enough to hold down that position for more than a game or two at a time. And I wonder if he is just better suited to be the team's third line center with Mark Jankowski and Luke Evangelista. We know that combination has some chemistry, but as much as we all admire what Colton Sissons has done for this franchise over the course of a decade plus, really, or close to it, he is not, in the long run, the type of center, second line center, that a contending team has. So I'm just wondering if it's still early in the season, as Barry Trotz said with Jared last week. Nobody's really making trades at this point of the season. But I'm wondering if sooner rather than later, Trotz is going to have to really look at addressing that position, because I just think that Colton Sissons at this point is more or less a stopgap while the Predators try to find a real answer for that position.
You asked Elliot about this last week, D. Mason. I thought Elliot gave you the dilemma, because there's nothing wrong with Tommy Novak offensively.
It's defensively.
It's defensively. It's the all-around skill set that you need to have to play that high up in the lineup. And so I think what Elliot said was the suspicion is right now that he's more cut out to the role he's been in, sort of the sneaky good offensive guy that's lower in the lineup, really more like Adam said, the third line, where the other team's going, man, that guy's a thorn in our side. Where are they getting this kind of guy? But he has not played well enough to graduate up and be the all-around guy. For example, last night, like you said, Adam, they just didn't trust him out there when Kucherov and those guys. And on the road, when the home team gets the last change, John Cooper of the Lightning, if he sees Novak out there, here comes Kucherov, here comes Point,
Gensel,
and you've got problems, right? And Andrew Burnett starts sweating a little bit on his bench going, oh boy, can we get through this next shift so I can get Colton? That's the thing that Colton Sissons gives you. He gives you the trust in the defensive area. Now, Colton Sissons is not the playmaker, an offensive skill set guy to be able to distribute the puck to Marchessault and Stamkos and guys like that to get them the offense. So if you could combine Novak and Sissons into one player, then you'd have your number two center.
Sissons, Novak.
But you have you have two guys that have sort of a diverse set of skills, and you can only put one of them out at the same time. So that's what they've got.
See, that's the problem when you have a sport that you not only have to play on the offensive end, but you got to play on the defensive end as well. And, the skill set that Tommy Novak has is coveted. but he's a liability on the defensive end. So you start him off on the second unit, and then you slowly start to, move him down to a unit where, okay, maybe you need to put him with more defensive guys and allow him to be the lone offensive guy. Maybe that's what you have to do, because his skill set is one that you need on your team. You need a guy that can score goals. You need a guy that can skate the way he can. And to not have him on the ice is you would be doing yourself a disfavor not having him on the ice. But he is a liability on the defensive end of the ice.
So they still need to work. The other thing that is not helping Novak is Luke Evangelista still hasn't played his best yet. He's had ups and downs. Mark Jankowski, who seems to be the right security blanket with Novak and Evangelista, they've had some moments, but they haven't clicked the way they did as a trio last year when the team was really playing well. I still think all of this will work itself out as they keep moving forward. But you do keep coming back to the same thing, Adam, and I think you're right to do so, is the pieces might fit a lot better if there was another guy they could find to be the second line center. And I don't know that they have it right now this year in Milwaukee. I think in the coming years, they like the young centers. Svechkov is one. The kid that they picked up in the trade for Askarov, I think they like down the road as a good, solid NHL player, but he's probably years away from really helping a winning team that's trying to win right now. So is there a rental coming? I think it's hard to find who that guy would be, right? That's one of the hardest things to find is a top six center. There were a few of them last year that changed teams, but it was pretty expensive to go get those guys, and they were rentals in a lot of cases. Elias Lindholm, Sean Monahan come to mind. I don't know if that group will emerge again this year, players like that, but I do think it's something to keep your eye on.
Certainly, and as we discussed, the Predators have trailed 2-0 in 6 of their 9 games this season. The first 3 and the past 3. The middle 3 against Edmonton, the rematch against Detroit, and the win against Boston. They did not trail 2-0. But in the first 3 games and the past 3 games, they have trailed 2-0. And by my rough count, they are 2-3-1 in those 6 games. So the fact that you have 5 standings points out of those 6 games is not a bad thing, but it's just not conducive to long-term success, putting yourself in a 2-0 hole on a frequent basis.
No,
well, they have the ability to come back. We know that.
No,
so,
and that's a good thing.
Yeah. But like you said, you don't want to put yourself in that position.
Right.
Every
And
game.
one thing that's also encouraging, and we saw it last night when the Predators started cutting into the Lightning's lead, is it appears that the Predators, for the first time in a few years, have a power play that when the Predators need that big goal, they have a 5-man unit that can go out and get it. We lamented the lack of power play scoring against the Canucks in the postseason last year. I specifically remember the 2019 playoff series against the Dallas Stars, where I believe they went 0 on the power play in that series. When they needed a big power play goal to change the momentum of a game, they were unable to get it. It now appears that that top unit specifically, O'Reilly, Stamkos, Marchessault, Josi, and Forsberg, has the ability to get that goal. We saw it with Ryan O'Reilly last night to cut the deficit to 2-1. That is also an encouraging sign, Willie, early in the season, as they appear to have a 5-man power play unit that can get you that big goal.
It does look like that, and I think it is going to get better as the season goes on. I still think there's a level of not thinking about it, knowing where everybody be, that hasn't kicked in. I think there's a little puck luck that hasn't kicked in. They're still looking like a team that is capable of scoring a lot more goals than they've scored so far. I believe their shooting percentage is still towards the bottom of the league, if not the bottom. Steven Stamkos, Roman Josi, noted goal scorers over the course of their career, have combined for 1 goal. Roman Josi, I believe, has the most shots on goal of anyone in the league who hasn't scored a goal yet. You know it's a matter of time before he starts scoring. Stamkos the same way. He's got 1 goal. And it's not like he's getting less shots than he got as a member of the Lightning. He's getting the same amount of shots. Can they get him the puck in a little better spot? Yeah, I think they can, and I think they will. But these are all encouraging signs to me. I have no worries about the offense. I think they will get the goals. Where they've got to gel is with their defensive structure. They're giving up way too many really good looks for the other team. And UC Saros and Scott Wedgwood the night before or Saturday night have bailed them out, which is a great thing. They're getting excellent goaltending to kind of mask some of the problems. But the defense pairings still don't look like they're set to me. The bottom part of the lineup, we mentioned Novak, Evangelista. The fourth line really was underwater last night, under siege. They're getting by, but they've got to get better. So there's a lot that needs to improve, and I think will improve. But the thing that I'm least worried about is the offensive firepower. I think that is just a matter of time before they bust out and score. I think they can go for several weeks and start getting close to 4 goals a night type of thing. I think they have that type of explosiveness.
615-737-1025. Our phone and text lines are driven by Wilson County Hyundai.com. Coming up next, we will chat with Tim Hasselbeck, ESPN NFL analyst, coach of the Ensworth Tigers. We'll get his thoughts on the Titans and more around the NFL. But before we do that, this week's Nashville's best deal of the week is Teddy's Tavern. Teddy's Tavern is your go-to spot for great food, cold drinks, and live music right in the heart of downtown. Get half off a $100 gift card now for Teddy's Tavern at thegamenashville.com/deals while supplies last.
There are a lot of Americans out there, a lot of Nashvillians, people in our listening area that for one reason or another, you've got some bills that you got to pay. Credit card debt, you're paying insane interest rates on that debt. Car loans, personal loans. Life happens, right? If you're a homeowner, Loan Pronto, again, wants you to know that they've got a great tool for you to improve and pay less with those interest rates. Lower that monthly budget. Get it in the ballpark that you're looking for. In fact, with Loan Pronto's Express Equity line of credit program, their average client saves over $1,000 every month. So you're going to be paying less per month with this program. Loan Pronto is going to get you a better interest rate by using your home's equity. You can get thousands of dollars of cash out of your equity to go attack and get those credit card bills to zero. That's what you're looking for. So get your financial house in order for 2025. Call Loan Pronto, 615-499-5780 or loanpronto.com. That's 615-499-5780 or loanpronto.com. Equal housing lender, NMLS 1661781, subject to lender approval, NMLSconsumeraccess.org.
D Mace, Vingan, and Donick. 1025, 1063. The game. Willie Donde, Derek Mason, Adam Vingan. I believe we are efforting Tim Hasselbeck, David. He's on the phone. But we will get to Tim Hasselbeck here. We have Tim Hasselbeck. Tim Hasselbeck is here, ESPN NFL analyst, coach of the Ensworth Tigers football team. And Tim, it's been a rough go, as we know, for the Tennessee Titans, now 1-6 after losing 52-14 to the Detroit Lions on Sunday. But there are still 10 games left to play. And I imagine one of the biggest challenges for Brian Callahan is going to be finding ways to keep his players engaged when it appears that the season has gone off the rails, so to speak. So what are some of the ways that Brian Callahan can go about doing that, making sure that his players are still playing as hard as they can, despite the fact that they're one of the worst teams in the NFL?
Well, you let them know that they're playing for their jobs. I mean, I think that's usually, that's usually the message is, look, you're on a real good football team. And usually there's blame to go around for everybody. And so every opportunity that you have out there is part of your resume. And, I think that that's generally the message. It's usually an effective message, kind of like the message in the preseason. It's like, hey, this is kind of an audition for everyone, it's an audition for, your current team, but also an audition for the rest of the league. So I think it's too early for that exact speech. But like at some point, everybody that's involved in pro football realizes that, like, yeah, that's where we are. And that's, why, you take pride in what you're doing.
On an unrelated note, Tim, I saw news yesterday that Michigan's quarterback, Jack Tuttle, is medically retiring from football. He's a seventh-year senior. He mentioned that he recently suffered the 5th concussion of his career. We also saw that Grayson McCall, the NC State quarterback, he recently retired because of multiple concussions. Do you think this is the start of a trend where collegiate players, maybe specifically quarterbacks, might be looking more toward their future and their health than playing football?
Well, I do think that we have seen some of it, in the past, like with other players, right? I mean, look, I think you guys know Ben Jones has been helping us coach at Ensworth, and Ben, really had to walk away from football because of concussions. And I think it just was received maybe differently because he had played over a decade in the NFL. But, it wasn't his knees or his shoulders or anything like that. It was, it was the concussions. So, like, I do think, and like thinking of other examples of it, there have been other players where that's been the case. I do think that when I read the thing on Jack Tuttle, that struck me as like this retiring from football when you are, I guess, quote unquote, like an amateur athlete. Just like the wording of it, kind of caught my attention. So like whether it's, the McCall kid at NC State, or whether it's, someone playing at Michigan, because these guys are getting paid to play football now, this idea of like retiring from the game of football when you're a college player, I do think that is new and can add to it. Cause yeah, like there always has been, there are guys that are stepping away from football because of the risk of head injuries or the history of head injuries, or, I mean, honestly, knee, shoulder injuries as well. But I do think like the coverage on it is slightly different. So like, I don't know if there's an uptick, but I do think it's something we'll see more of, or we'll just be more aware of.
I will say that there was no report on my retiring from minor league baseball when I got released from the Blue Jays.
Well, it could have been,
no
but
coverage.
you just didn't see it. It was so small, you didn't see it.
They retired you.
Yes, that's what we're getting at.
There was a news brief in the Medicine Hat newspaper.
You know what's funny? About this? Like, I don't know how old I was. I was like 30, and I was living in New York City, and I retired from football, like in quotes, retired from football. And I remember I said to somebody, it was like at a party or some type of gathering, and like everyone I was there with was like a lawyer. Look at me and they're like, bro, like you ain't retired, you're 30 years old. Like you got another, like you got a long
way to go in
road
life,
of work
yeah.
ahead of you. Yeah. No.
Well, Tim, you know that happens when guys retire. You know, namely athletes, you're old in the athletic world, but you're extremely young when you're talking about outside of that athletic realm. And then you tell people, "Well, I've retired," and they look at you like those people looked at you like, "Man, you're serious?
Yeah,
You retired?"
Yeah. You employee number 7 at Facebook? Like, what talk to me here? Like,
absolutely. Now, I'm gonna get to my Titans question in a minute, but obviously, what happened in Indianapolis with Richardson and him taking himself off the field. Listen, I'm not gonna dump on a young man or whatnot, but I think Shane Steichen could have helped him. If he came to the sideline and said, "Coach, I'm tired," that's when you call a timeout. That's when you call a timeout. Allow your quarterback to catch his breath, and then you put him back in the game. You don't leave it up to him, especially at a critical moment like that. Yeah, the young man's tired. He's been running for his life, and then you're asking him to get underneath center and basically run the ball again or some type of RPO that he may keep the football. Is that a situation where Shane Steichen should have helped this quarterback out and just called a timeout?
I think there's so much operationally there that was done completely wrong. So here's the deal with a quarterback. So let's say a quarterback needs a breather or needs to come out of the game at any point, no matter what happens. He 100% of the time should go down on the field, always. And the reason he should go down on the field is that the backup is not there throwing every series. See, the backup is not, taking a snap from, the center, in between every series. So anytime a quarterback needs to come out of the game, he should 1,000% all the time go down in the field of play and stop the game. And then if Shane Steichen wants to say, hey, we want to be able to put him back in, well, then call your timeout. And now all of a sudden you have him resting on the field and your timeout for him to catch his breath to go back into the game. But there should never be it's not like receiver where like, hey, I'm tired. And like, there's another guy there, like who's playing in 3 wides, who was in 2 plays earlier, they can run out on the field. Like you never as a quarterback ever should leave the field and not go down on the field. So like, to me, like that, there's so much lack of awareness there on Richardson's part, on anyone on the sideline's part. When he's tapping his head, walking over to the sideline, everybody should say, fall on the ground right now. Like that should never happen. I saw that and I thought, like, he's tapping his head. Does he want to come out? Like, if you do want to come out, like, honestly, if I were Joe Flacco in that environment, I would have like thrown him back onto the field and been like, dude, lay down while I warm up. Like,
at least give me an extra throw or two before
correct.
I got to go back on the field.
Correct.
Yeah, you're right about that. And they want they want athletes to be honest, and Richardson was honest. But that's one time that maybe you should hold your honesty back and
but
give
I think
them
that,
something
but
else.
No, you're right. But I do think like we all can be aware too.
Yeah,
like the
exactly.
way Richardson's playing the position is very different than the way Kirk Cousins is playing the position, right? So
Yes.
Kirk doesn't need a blow because he plays from the pocket all the time, right?
Yeah.
Well, like these other guys that are asked to run, quarterback counter and power and all that, like, yeah, it's different.
Now, Tim, have you ever been on a team like this with the Tennessee Titans where that you're looking around a locker room and you're not calling people out or whatnot, but that, hey, listen, this locker room isn't equipped to win based upon the personnel or lack thereof personnel. And you still have to go out there and do a job, but the job that you're doing, you're getting blamed for it. And no one's really truly seeing the big problem, which is the lack of depth on the team and then a lack of true playmakers on both sides of the ball.
Yeah, I mean, have I? Yeah, I mean,
And how do you hold it together in the locker room when that is going on?
yeah, to me, I think that one, you have to have the right guys. Like you saw it a little bit, like with the Las Vegas Raiders, like when they weren't equipped to win, and Devontae Adams is like, "Hey, man, like I should be on a contender." Like even the best of teammates, the best of guys, like they turn, right? They sour, and that's a problem. So I think that's really where the tough dynamic is. And I don't know that the Titans really have this scenario, but like, yeah, do you have a couple veteran star players, on the defensive line that could say, like, wait a minute, like I didn't sign up for this. Like, yeah, you could, but I don't think the team is necessarily like, littered with the superstar as well as like the guys that are just hanging on to prove that they belong in the league. I think it's probably more of a team that's like, prove that you belong, right? Like even Pollard, like I don't know. I mean, that's not the equivalent of Christian McCaffrey, like it's not. So I think in terms of holding it together, I think you have more guys that are still trying to prove like their place in the league and play for a next contract and put good film out there. That I still think I think that can overtake the locker room in a positive way.
Talking to Tim Hasselbeck. Tim, I watched the 49ers on Sunday night, and I'm waiting for it to look like it's supposed to look for them. And I know they haven't had McCaffrey from the start. But the guy I kept coming back to is Brock Purdy. He just doesn't look like the same guy to me. What's going on with him?
Yeah. Well, I just think that, look, I think we could maybe all say like the most important player on that team after the quarterback position is Christian McCaffrey, right? An elite player. And so like, they're playing that the Guerrero guy, the running back out of Louisville. He's a good player in their system and all that stuff, but he's not Christian McCaffrey. Doesn't have the versatility of McCaffrey. Brandon Ayuk is not there. I mean, so like remove two really good players, from any offense, and it can look different. And so I think that no doubt there's an element of that that's going on for the Niners. Now, I think the interesting thing for the Niners will be, like, McCaffrey should come back. Debo was back in the lineup and made some plays. Like, they're not going to get Ayuk back, but like I do think it can start to look more like what we were used to seeing. I just think this, I've always felt like this about quarterbacks in the National Football League. I think there's a couple guys that can make, no matter who's around them, can make them all way better. And then I think there's like this next segment of quarterbacks that are winning quarterbacks, but who they play with matters, right? So like Jared Goff, like to me, Jared Goff and Brock Purdy, all that different? Maybe not, but Jared Goff is playing with elite players right now at running back, at tight end, at receiver. They've got a really good offensive line. And so like, hey, why does it look the way it looks? Like, that's a big part of the reason why. And so most quarterbacks, it's still a dependent position. Most quarterbacks are dependent on their supporting cast.
So with sort of that same family of questions, just kind of in the same area, what do you think of Russell Wilson and what he's done with the Steelers here? Because the Steelers all of a sudden have put themselves in really good position.
Yeah, I think it was a little bit of fool's gold in terms of last week, in terms of, how Russell Wilson looked passing the football. You go back a couple weeks, like like the passing, I think, appeared to be better than it actually was, because Pickens made a couple plays and all that stuff. And then I think they play the Giants. I mean, that's just, it's like, I'm being totally real. Like, I think that's what's happened. Do I think Russell Wilson is going to continue to play like that for the rest of the year against better opponents? When they play the Browns defense again, or they play the Ravens, or like, I don't think it'll look like that. I think there will be times where it was like, oh, is Russell Wilson still the best guy? So I think in some ways there's been a little bit of, fooling going on with that.
Well, he got bailed out twice last night by two great catches. that should have
Right.
been either interceptions or incomplete passes.
Yeah, and go back 2 weeks, and it's even worse, in terms of that. Like, I'm not trying to, say that to say that, like, like Mike Tomlin shouldn't have made the move or anything like that. I just think that I think it's looked better than it actually has been on the final stat sheet. But if you go back and look at it, you're like, listen, these 2 plays in this game or these 2 plays in that game go the other way, then the numbers are different. And honestly, the outcome of the game is probably different.
All right, Tim, before we let you go, quick thought on what you're seeing on the college level, specifically Vanderbilt. It's like in the big family. I was watching Ohio State earlier in the day. They could not run the ball against Nebraska.
Mm-hmm.
And everybody in the stadium is going, what is going on? This is we're like a 2-touchdown favorite here. We're not supposed to have these kind of struggles. And I actually had a weird feeling after the Vanderbilt Texas game. You're almost ticked off that they lost. You're like, wait a minute, this was the number one team last week.
Whoa.
Isn't that weird, though?
Almost ticked off. Dude, you went there. You're almost ticked off that they lost to Texas?
Well, I was really having a mental problem with myself because I'm sitting there going, I should be thrilled that they for the first half, that looked like, well, maybe the Cinderella is wearing off and they're going to get run out of the building. And then here they come. They're hanging around, and you're at the end of the game going, if they just hadn't turned it over here or there, they could have won. It's pretty crazy.
Well, listen, I agree with you on that. And I think, obviously Clark's done an amazing job. The whole coaching staff's done an amazing job because, like you look at the coin toss of that Texas Vanderbilt game. I was at the game. I'm looking at it, and I'm like, I didn't know that humans could look like number 95 from Texas. Like, holy smokes. You're all SEC players and all that stuff, but 95, it was like he was like a made-up player from Madden or something. He looked so ridiculous. Anyway. So, yeah, you know what's funny? I when you do look around at just run game stuff, I think sometimes it's scheme. Sometimes you come up with a little wrinkle and just the front's a little bit different and you don't block the same. Sometimes it's just matchups where, a smaller guy that plays with good leverage gets in the way. So I do think, and it's different at the high school level than the college level, but I will say, similar thing happens to us, and it ends where it's where I feel like you should be able to run the football well, and you get in the game and you're like, that guy, for whatever reason, he's just giving us a hard time. And then, we're just, you missed a block and then, you don't have the opportunity to get 3 more cracks at it. Right. Because then, it's 3rd and whatever. Now you're throwing the football. So, I don't know. I think when you look at it in terms of college football, it's still players, not plays. And I think just being candid, just even locally, like Diego's made that much of a difference. It's definitely players, not plays. And, I think the grittiness and the competitiveness of making the most of the majority of the opportunities is kind of what's been the big difference.
Tim Hasselbeck, ESPN NFL analyst, and I forgot to mention this, so I'm going to mention it now. The head coach of the 9-0
Coach of the year,
Ensworth Tigers.
Oh, really?
Coach of the year.
According to who? D-Mace, you?
According to me and everybody I'm talking to.
You guys are funny. I appreciate you having me on. Look forward to it next week.
Absolutely.
Always a pleasure, Tim. Thank you for joining us.
See you guys.
615-737-1025. I do want to get into something that Tim said about how teams in the position that the Titans are in right now, how those locker rooms find ways to stay motivated and stick together, because that's a big question that the Titans are going to have to face as their season continues along. 615-737-1025. Willie Donick, Derek Mason, Adam Vingan, 1025-1063. The Game. D-Mace, Vingen and Donick, 102.5, 106.3. The Game. Always a pleasure to talk football with Tim Hasselbeck. And quickly, Derek, I wanted to get your reaction to something that Tim said about the Titans and keeping the locker room together, keeping players motivated. I asked you during the break if you were on a team in a similar position, and the only one that you could think of was one that was so badly injured.
Yeah.
The team had no choice to play depth players. And you said, was that your final
that was
season?
our final year here.
Okay, so that would have been 2004.
Yeah, 04.
Okay.
Where, a lot of guys, we were just depleted of talent because of injury. Not just with the starters, but then the guys that, we asked to spell the starters for whatever time. A few of those guys end up going down. Now you're looking at your locker room and you're unfamiliar with individuals, at least unfamiliar with them playing on the field with you. You're unfamiliar with them. And you're looking around like, man, what are we going to do? And frankly, the answer is nothing. There's nothing you can do. You just try to weather the storm and go out there and just continue to play, hard and physical. And hopefully that wins you some games, because that as far as talent, man to man, you are not where other teams are at, not because the roster was bad at the beginning of the season. It was because no one could anticipate not just the starters going down, but then the backups coming in and them going down as well. So that was probably the closest I came to a team that resembles this Tennessee Titans team. But when you talk about, the lack of depth, the lack of, your bottom half, I didn't experience that. And, a lot of it was you got to take your hat off to Floyd and what he was able to accomplish. He and Jeff Fisher together, but we know how that relationship ended. But I think because of him, meaning Floyd, that roster was set to compete for years, even though guys were going to come in and out of the building. But the core of the roster, the young guys, were there and they were ready to participate whenever their chance and opportunity came.
615-737-1025. This is going to be a big test for Brian Callahan as a first-year NFL head coach, trying to keep a locker room together that's already seen a couple of players leave because of trades, because of the shape the team is in record-wise, and trying to motivate these players to continue playing. Because, look, as bad as it is for the Tennessee Titans, we still have 10 games left to watch. There are still 10 games left to be played. They have an opportunity this week to get back on the winning track against a team that's just as bad as they are in the New England Patriots. And we'll talk about the impact of that game as the week progresses. But coming up next, I want all of us to channel our inner John Tappers. If you're a fan of a certain show and you know who John Taffer, I'm sorry, I said John Tapper. I should have said John Taffer. We're all going to channel our inner John Taffers. Willie and Derek have no idea.
Just no cussing.
Yes, no cursing. David knows what I'm talking about. Willie and Derek don't seem to know what I'm talking about, but I'll explain next. Willie Donick, Derek Mason, Adam Vingen, 102.5, 106.3, The Game.
Let's talk Lead Company, proud sponsor Nashville Predators. Nashville now 3-0-1 in the last four, creeping back up after the slow start. Came from behind last night. That seems to be their MO lately, and earned an overtime point in a wild up and down game with Tampa after they were down 2-0 in the return of Steven Stamkos. Next up, the Edmonton Oilers on Thursday, and you'll see the Lead Company display all around Bridgestone Arena. They sponsor our coverage as well here on 102.5 The Game. Lead Company has you covered in your home or at your business. You've got a business maintenance problem, Just go online to leecompany.com and make the online appointment. And at home, have you had your heating unit checked? If you haven't, make sure it's running properly for the colder months that are just around the corner. 615-567-1000 or leecompany.com, and get that year-round relationship with Lee Company, because they're always ready to serve you with your heating, air conditioning, plumbing, and electrical needs. It's outstanding. Lee Company has you covered. 80 years of service in our market. That's 80, 1944. Pretty impressive stuff. 615-567-1000 or leecompany.com. Lee Company, proud sponsor, Nashville Predators.
D-Mays, Fingan, and Donick, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Broadcasting from the Busy Bee Plumbing, Heating, and Air Conditioning Game Nashville studios, home of the $99 yearly Beehive membership, where the buzz is always about great service. Willie Donick, Derek Mason, and Adam Bingen here with you. So before the break, I referenced a gentleman by the name of John Taffer. Shame on me. I said Tapper with a P. It's Taffer with an F. Now, I've come to learn that neither Willie nor Derek are familiar with the program known as Bar Rescue. It's
Nah,
an
I've never seen
it's
it.
an excellent program.
So good.
It's
one
one
my
of those
favorites.
it's so bad it's good programs, to reference the movie that we were talking about at the start of the show. So this show, according to Wikipedia, there have been 265 episodes of Bar Rescue. It premiered in July 2011, and that's when I discovered it. So I was shortly out of college, and I just remember binging this show. And the premise of the show is John Taffer. He's a food and beverage industry consultant who specializes in bars and nightclubs. And people petition him to come to their bar or nightclub and fix it from disarray. You know, the upkeep is terrible, the food is terrible, they're hemorrhaging money. And he comes in there and he screams and he yells and he throws things, and he's really a big jerk. But more often than not, at least the show portrays it as such. He comes up with a concept, and the people who own the restaurants and bars and nightclubs, they do better financially because of it. It's really, if you watch one episode, you will be hooked. There are marathons of this show. I feel like it's every Sunday. So instead of watching NFL pregame, if you just want to watch 4 hours of Bar Rescue, you can do that if you'd like. But the reason why I bring this up is because early in the show, the first few seasons, they would do the intro. They would introduce John Tapper, and there was always a soundbite that they would use in that intro. And he would say, "I don't embrace excuses. I embrace solutions." And that's what I want us to do.
Mhm.
I want us to find solutions for what ails the Tennessee Titans. Because look, the Titans season, it's a lost season. They're 1-6. They've gotten their butts kicked each of the past 2 weeks. And there isn't a lot of hope for this team. I also don't want us to do doom and gloom 3 hours a day for the rest of the Titan season, because there are 10 more games left to play. So I would like for us to try to start the process of finding solutions. And look, we may go through this process, and the solution might be there needs to be a new general manager. There needs to be a new, whatever the title that Chad Brinker has. There needs to be fresh blood in the front office. But I'm trying to see if there's anything that we can pinpoint that the Titans can build off of. Because we're getting to a point now where Jared is doing segments on his show because somebody tweeted at TD that Jared should be the general manager of the Tennessee Titans. And Jared saying with a straight face that he thinks he could do just as good of a job as Ran Carthon and Chad Brinker because they don't know football. Now, fortunately, Jared has put up a poll on his Twitter at Jared Stillman asking who would be a better GM of the Titans, him or Ran Carthon and Chad Brinker. And last I checked, I believe Carthon and Brinker were winning or have won the poll, but it's so close, it's painful. It was like 51-49. So if we're getting to a point where Jared is openly wondering that he could do a better job of being the GM, that's the shape that we're in right now with this team. But I want to find solutions. And Willie, you proposed something interesting yesterday for us to begin this process of finding solutions to help put the Tennessee Titans back on the right track.
Well, I don't know if we're going to have solutions, but
we're going to try.
But my outlook is never just clean house and start over with somebody else, because then you get a new set of problems. I think you deserve time, and Derek and I have articulated day in and day out why Ran Carthon and his sidekick Chad Brinker inherited a huge amount of these issues. And so I thought we could start by just taking a look at the roster right now. And this is what is staring them in the face going forward. And it's not pretty. Just to contrast, like when John Robinson walked into the GM position, he had the first overall pick in the draft in his hand, and he started dealing from there. He got more picks, and he was, and I would argue he had more established players already on the roster to work with. He knew who the quarterback was. It didn't end up being that guy for forever, but he had Marcus Mariota, who had played a year or two. He had Jarrell Casey and some other pieces, right, that you could use. I would argue that Rand Carthon, where they are right now, and we're going to go over this. You tell me if you disagree, if you're out there listening. But I think this exercise really shows you, and he's got to take part responsibility for this. But I would say 85 to 90% of this was inherited. So let's start looking at the draft picks that they've made that are on the team that the jury is still kind of out on. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And you kind of give a grade, all right, of return on investment, where you think it's going. Let's start with J.C. Latham, right? That is Rand Carthon's bell cow first pick, where we know he was in charge. He made this decision. How would you grade him? He's 21 years old.
I would give him a C right now, a C plus. Latham.
That's all?
Yeah, I would give him a C plus. I think he's gotten a lot better from the beginning of the season, or even from preseason.
Well, I'm worried about the GPA if you're giving only, because to me, he's the brightest spot that they have. And this is saying something, right?
Young guys under, or are we going with your premise under the age of 27? Or you just saying
these are draft picks who are in their first contract that the jury is out on.
Yeah, I give him a C plus. He still has,
give him a C+.
It's early in the season. He still has room to up that grade.
He's one of the youngest guys at his position. I would give him a little higher grade. I would give him a B. And I'm hoping that will grow. I think there's a huge room for improvement here. But Adam, what would you say?
I was going to put him somewhere in the B range. If we're doing plus and minus, I would say probably B minus.
Okay.
Let's
not spend too much time on any one guy.
Right.
Sweat, Meatloaf, Devondre, 23 years old.
I gave him a C.
You gave him a C.
Yeah.
I give him a B. I think he is a guy that's going to be around for a while. I think he brings a lot to the table. He's not I don't think he's Warren Sapp, right? I don't think he is Aaron Donald as a pass rusher, as that much of an athlete, but his size, he does a lot of good things to help a defense. I think he's a piece that you think will be around for a while. To me, that deserves a good grade.
Yeah.
He's shown flashes. I would probably still lean towards the low B, high C with Devondre Sweat, but I see something there that can become something important.
All of these guys, you're trying to project.
Exactly.
And you're asking yourself, okay, they stink right now. Nobody's arguing that. And like you said, Adam, it's probably a lost season. So you're saying, what about next year, the year after, and the year after? That's what a GM has to do. What do I have? What is building? And so if we're giving these guys B's and C's, those are the two best prospects that they have right now. Would we argue?
Yeah. No,
Latham and Sweat are the best prospects they have from the drafts, from the last few drafts.
Yeah.
Here's the rest of the list.
That has played considerable amount of snaps.
Yeah. All right. So Jaquan Jackson.
You can't give him a grade. He scored. Right. He scored on one of his plays, ended up getting called back.
No.
But that's an incomplete grade right now because
I want to see more. Incomplete.
Yeah.
Okay. I would agree. Incomplete, but he showed enough. I'd like to see a little bit more.
Exactly.
He looks like a reasonably decent option to return. He got a big play negated last week. So I'm not writing him off into the sunset, right? Would you agree, Adam?
Yeah.
Okay. I would put Jarvis Brownlee in the same category. He's 23. He's been thrown to the Wolves. He's getting to play a lot. I think he's got some pretty decent athleticism. He's made some good plays, and he's been exploited, picked on.
He's sort of, to me,
so what would you grade him?
He falls in the category of Devondre Sweat. I think he's at this point, he's a C guy.
Give him a C? All right. Adam? C?
Yeah.
Okay. Roger McCreary, 24 years old.
I'd lean more B with McCreary.
A B?
Yes.
I'm a hard grader, man. I really am. A C plus.
Okay. C plus. I give him a B. I think he probably is a piece that you would keep around for a second contract.
Absolutely.
Again, you're going to see how rare this is. Josh Wiley.
He's a D.
A D.
And a D minus might be.
Serviceable second, third tight end.
Third tight end at this point.
Not a difference maker.
Yeah.
Not a difference maker. All right. Dylan Radins. Recovery reclamation project that is, relatively speaking, a good story.
I've been
on a
most
bad team.
I've been most impressed by Radence of all of the players that you have listed so far, considering where he came from,
Okay.
what we thought of him, and where he is now. Do I see him as, the linchpin of an offensive line for years to come? I can't say that with certainty, but
maybe worth a second contract?
I would say so, yes.
Okay.
I would put, considering where he was an F student. He barely came to school. And then where he's a C minus.
Okay, C minus. Tyjae Spears.
Tyjae
Incomplete.
is
kind of an incomplete.
I'm not gonna put him as an incomplete. I'm gonna put him as a C player at this point.
Okay.
Because he has played enough, to where
you see some flashes.
You see some stuff in him.
He's only 23.
Yeah, so I give him a C.
So I would put that list as the jury's still out on all those guys.
Mm-hmm.
I think McCreary and Radence are getting to the point where they're going to have to make decisions on those guys soon.
Yes.
But none of those, they have no needle movers except for possibly Latham and Sweat.
Yes.
Okay, then we get to the big question marks. Maybe this is a medium question mark, but Chig, 25, another guy that's not moving the needle. He shows you a little bit here and there. Not a guy that you're building around, not a foundational piece. I'm still looking for those.
Yeah.
I have Latham and Sweat as potential foundational pieces, and they're still, we don't know, right? Will Levis, Peter Skoronski, Nicholas Petit-Frere. Major question marks.
All three of those guys, along with Chig, and I do like Chig. I really do.
Yeah.
But those three guys, along with Chig, they are at a point they're replaceable.
Right.
They are
trending in the wrong
guys.
direction
Yes,
would be those
absolutely.
four, right?
And I don't know if Chig is more so because of the quarterback and them not being settled at that position, or is it him?
Okay. Would you agree, Adam? These guys are trending in the wrong direction.
Yes, absolutely.
Skoronski is still only 23 and has some time because they really have to give him the time, like Radence. They can't give up on him. They invested too much in him. But I would put major question marks there. Okay, so those are the recent draft picks. So it shows you how scarce we're talking, right?
And let's be clear.
All of these guys are 26. The oldest guy on that list that I just gave you is Radence at 26.
And let's be clear about something, because I'm already going to fend off things on our text line driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. Ran Carthon is partially responsible for that, and John Robinson is partially responsible for that. We are not only blaming John Robinson for this. Both GMs are responsible for what Willie just detailed. I want that to be abundantly clear.
Right. The last two drafts, Rand Carthon has at least been in the room. Of course, the last draft was all him and not Vrabel. Okay, so that pretty much gives you all you've got there. Now let's get to the expense. The vets that they have invested in would be the next group of players to evaluate.
And let's do that next. Willie Donick, Derek Mason, Adam Vingad, 1025, 1063, The Game.
See, I mean, this is bleak. It's just bleak.
November 9th, mark your calendars. It's the Iron Goddess all-female show, which is coming to Nashville, which is sponsored by our friends over at Law Tigers. Meet us at the fairgrounds, as female riders from all over the world will be in attendance. Come out and see some of these beautiful custom bikes, from choppers to mini bikes, from cruisers to sports bikes. I know when you were little, you love cruisers, you love sports bikes. I love choppers. So if you want to relive your childhood, then you need to be at the fairgrounds on November 9th. All makes and models are encouraged to come. Get your tickets now at IronGoddessMotorcycleShow.com. That's IronGoddessMotorcycleShow.com, which is sponsored by Law Tigers. Enjoy a day of live music, vendor village, tasty foods, and so much more. Show off your bike in one of their many competitions and win cash prizes. All spectators are welcome, and kids under 16 are free with a paid ticket. So November 9th, mark your calendar at the fairground, the Iron Goddess all-female show, which is coming to Nashville. Can't wait to see you there.
Running a bar is not just a business, it's a science. No one knows more about bar science than John Taffer.
I don't embrace excuses. I embrace solutions.
For more than 30 years, John has transformed hundreds of failing bars worldwide.
I believe that you could do this.
John turns money pits
Clean the place out.
into money makers.
Maybe the Titans need to hire John Taffer.
Has he ever been
Maybe.
an NFL GM?
He has not.
Okay. And there's Jared. So
Yeah.
maybe the voting poll should include this guy.
Yes. There's your next poll question, Jared. Who would make a better GM of the Titans? You, Rand Carthon, and Chad Brinker, or John Taffer? Vote now. D-Mays, Vingan, and Donick, 1025, 1063 the game. And before we get back to our conversation, Trey has been waiting patiently on our phone line, driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. Trey, thank you for waiting. Please go ahead.
Hey, how y'all doing today?
Good,
Doing
you?
Good, Trey.
Good. Hey, I just wanted to say, man, I'm gonna make a bold prediction
Mm-hmm.
that I see 2 wins out of Will Levis. It won't be consecutive games, and I want Derek to, tell me basically what his grade would be, overall grade on Will Levis and Rand Carthon, not individually, but overall. And I'll leave y'all alone. Y'all have a good day. Thank you.
Well, that's kind of what we're
Thank you,
doing
Trey.
on,
That's-
on Rand Carthon.
That's
Jared.
the process that we're
Exactly.
going through right now.
And we just sort of gave Levis I mean, are we giving him anything higher than an F? I mean, it's trending in the wrong direction. The semester is not
an
old.
F. It's a D minus.
His sophomore year is not
F.
over, but he's on academic probation.
Yeah, he's really on
double
F.
double secret probation.
Double secret.
No,
probation,
he might be on triple secret probation right about now.
mandatory study hall.
Every day,
6 a.m.
even on Saturdays after the game.
detention. I mean, it's not good. And in the last segment, we didn't even mention Traylon Burks, another guy. So now we're about to get to the invested veterans that were free agent signings last year, and you're seeing why they needed to spend all those millions of dollars. And this is not an exercise to say Rand Carthon has done a good job. It is to illustrate what Rand Carthon inherited. And so let's review just quickly. I'm not going to go through every name, but the 2020, 2021, and 22 drafts that he had zero to do with. Those are the 3 drafts that you should have a foundation of players to build around. Here's what he has from those 3 drafts that he had zero to do with. 0.0, to use another Animal House term to go along with double secret probation. He has Dylan Radins. He has Roger McCreary. He has Chig. He has,
Traylon Burks.
if you want to count him, that's it.
Yes,
Those are the guys that are still on the team. On the team. That's it.
Petit Frere is also on the team, but he has been demoted.
Yeah,
Petit
So-
Frere. I mean, they're failing. That's what he inherited. Okay.
Yes.
That is a huge thing. And that is where we started our coverage on this show on training camp is this is what's facing you. All right. So now let's go to what they tried to do to get around that and be competitive. And keep in mind that Will Levis is on double secret probation, mandatory study hall, the guy that you were hoping could lift up some of these other problems. And he's done nothing. He has taken them down another notch.
I'm thinking
Okay.
of when I was in college. I believe it was my freshman year. I was in one class, and on the day of the midterm, so we're halfway through the semester. On the day of the midterm, this guy walks towards the door. He peeks his head in and goes, "Is this so-and-so's history class?" He had not been to class all semester.
Right.
wow.
But he was showing up for the midterm. God knows how he did. But I'm just thinking of Will Levis just skipping every class through the first half of the semester, then showing up for the midterm and be like, is this Mr. Donick's history class? That's kind of what I imagine Will Levis doing right now.
All right, so here are the veterans. Harold Landry, the most expensive player the Titans have. He's a good player. He makes over $23 million against the cap. Return on investment,
It's been good to me.
he's good.
He's a good player.
He is not, and he's 28.
Mhm.
So you have to project. Again, I'm trying to build
Yeah.
a team. This season is lost. Where am I next year? Where am I the following year? What about when the new stadium opens? That's what we're looking at. Can Rand Carthon and Chad Brinker and his coaching staff survive and get to that day one of the opening stadium? That has got to be their goal.
Mhm.
Harold Landry is your most expensive player. He's got an out after this year. He's a good player,
Mhm.
but he makes an enormous amount of money. It's the most expensive player you have. So what would you say?
I
B?
would give him
He's
a
a B.
B, and I'll rework his contract so he'll be here another
Okay.
at least 2
He's
to 3
the
years.
only player on the team consistently generating pressure.
Exactly.
But the other team isn't sitting there going, "Oh my God, we got to
I
double
guess
team him every day."
I
He's
guarantee
good.
you. I guarantee you, when they're in the offensive meetings, they're saying, "Listen, they don't have many pass rushers, legit pass rushers, but that guy
Right.
right there, you need to block him. We need
But
to keep an
nobody's
eye on him."
mistaking him for Lawrence Taylor
No, he's not that guy.
or Javon Curse. I mean, he's not that kind of guy. He's good.
He's not
he's
that
done
guy
a nice job.
Mhm.
He's done a nice job recovering from a major injury,
Mhm.
and he's a good, solid pro. That's how I would characterize it. Now you have Jeffrey Simmons, another guy that you're paying to be a superstar. He actually is a little less against the cap that Landry is right now. It's close. You're not getting great play out of him right now. Fair to say?
Yeah,
Not
but you're
getting
not
what
getting
you're hoping.
You're not getting what you
But
expected.
he's
to
supposed
get.
to be
Yeah,
the star that
dominant,
you're
yeah.
building around.
But again,
So what's his future of the next 2 or
I
3
think
years?
you
I don't
keep
know.
him. I think you keep him.
Well, they
Yeah.
don't have much of a choice unless I don't know if you could trade him and get what you would hope to get for him until his stock goes up. So, but obviously, when you're comparing him to everything else, he still looks good, but he hasn't done well for a couple years.
He hasn't played up to his standard.
Yeah.
He hasn't played up to
Your
the standard.
expectation is high.
Yeah,
It's like
he
you
set
tell
right before the contract.
you tell your great pupil in your class, Derek, you have a B,
Mhm.
but I expect you to get an A.
Exactly.
Now Willie over here,
Mhm.
he's doing well to get a B, right? He's overachieving to get. There are certain
Exactly.
students in your class you expect more from Simmons.
Don't sell yourself short, Willie.
Willie got all B's. He just messing with you. A's and B's. And
No.
that's because he slacked.
No.
He was getting B's without even thinking about it.
All right, so let's go to Ridley. He's 30. Year one of a contract. He's the third most expensive player against the cap, according to SpotRec, $10 million. And we know he's got a lot of guaranteed money, signing bonus, all that stuff.
That's a C for me.
A C at best.
A
C at best.
yeah.
And is he going to be around for the next 2 or 3 years? You're probably stuck with him.
At least
But
until
he's-
next year, after next season.
It better get a whole lot better.
Mhm.
L'Jarius Sneed, another guy that you traded to get. You paid him big money.
He's been a C minus.
C minus. I mean, he's not playing like a star.
No way near it.
He's been okay.
At best.
Yeah, the problem is
Cushenberry, same thing,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah,
He's good.
same
He's
thing.
okay. But anything higher than a B is being kind.
Exactly.
He's been okay.
Or
Tony
anything
Pollard.
higher than a C, really.
Tony Pollard.
he has been the bright spot on offense.
Yeah,
Tony Pollard?
him is a B. He's a B plus.
You give him a B plus? Okay,
Yes.
fine. But is he setting the world on fire? Is he in
No,
your
no.
fantasy lineup?
No.
You putting him in your fantasy lineup? Probably not, unless it's
No.
a super deep league and he's your flex guy.
Mhm.
Probably, right? I mean, we're not going. He's not a bell cow going to score touchdowns. He's been good. He's a solid pro. And once again, this whole group. Let's go Sebastian Joseph Day, another decent, solid role player, right?
Yes.
C.
D solid C.
Amani Hooker,
Solid
they
C.
he's a guy you drafted. He's on his second contract. He gets hurt a lot. C.
C.
Not moving the needle. Kenneth Murray,
Mhm.
not bad. Free
No.
agency. Arden Key, So you have a lot of, this is all the money you spent. These are the money guys in free agent.
Mhm.
You have a group of players. How many of those players are on the next good Titans team?
Not many.
They're all 27 or higher.
Not many are on
Hooker
this
and Murray are a
next
little younger. They're still
iteration
26.
of the Titans team.
By the way, we do have some breaking NFL news that's similar in tone to this conversation, according to Adam Schefter, and we can talk about this later. A quarterback change for the Colts. Indianapolis is benching former first-round pick Anthony Richardson and turning to Joe Flacco.
Wow.
Sources tell Jeremy Fowler and me, meaning Adam Schefter. Coaches met this morning and made the seismic organizational decision to change quarterbacks. So
now we'll see if we'll test the theory of, can you get benched as the young guy and then end up coming back? Because I'm sure they're not writing Richardson off forever, right? They think they're going to bring him back up at some point.
But if you're looking at similar situations, you're looking at where the Colts are, you're looking at where the Jaguars are, if you just want to keep it in the AFC South. Willie, what's the one thing you always mention about Will Levis? He was a second-round pick. You haven't invested a lot in him. Richardson was the 4th overall pick in the draft. It's a much harder thing to do, to make that decision.
Yeah.
To bench him for Joe Flacco.
And they still see themselves as a team that could do something this year, right? They still feel like they could maybe sneak in. Will Levis, by the way, makes 0.85% of the Titans salary cap. So
they can keep him around.
It'd be pretty easy to walk away or even keep him around for nothing. All right, then you have depth guys. You tell me if you see anything in this group. Mason Rudolph, Nick Vannett, Nick Westbrook-Akine, Tyler Boyd, Quandre Diggs, who's 31, Daniel Brunskill, Gifford, Jack Gibbons. These are all like role players, right? These are guys that are just filling out your roster, right, at this point. So I look at this as collective. What do you have going forward?
You don't
the
have
list
much.
Is short. You're hoping that Simmons bounces back and can give you a good back nine of his career. Like Jarrell Casey had a good resurgence. He was a good veteran presence on some good Titan teams at the very end of his career. A guy like Landry, maybe if he can play well into his early 30s, could be a part of a next Titans team. It's going to cost you. Those guys are going to be expensive. Ridley, Snead. It's just a series of question marks. The needle moving players you have are next to nothing. And how much of that is on Rand?
Well, that free agency class.
But he had no choice. It was that, like, if you didn't
also
spend
some more breaking news. Stephon Diggs is out for the season with an ACL.
Tore an ACL.
Ooh, okay.
Saw that play.
So Stephon Diggs, speaking of the AFC
Scratch
South,
him from your fantasy roster.
Yes.
You now have a roster spot.
According to Ian Rappaport, Adam Schefter, whomever, Texans receiver Stephon Diggs suffered a season-ending knee injury Sunday against the Colts. So Stephon Diggs, his season is over, and Anthony Richardson being benched for Joe Flacco. A lot happening in the AFC South today.
Okay, so the free agency class, I grant you, is on Rand. But what would you have done, given the fact that we just went through the list? Dylan Radins and Roger McCreary are your best players from 3 drafts that had nothing to do with you. Let me just repeat those 2 names. Your best players from 3 drafts, Dylan Radins and Roger McCreary. So what would you do? Would you just not spend any money on free agency? You have to fill out a roster. So they did what they thought was the best they could. But those are just papering over glaring holes that they had no choice to fill. And you were hoping that Will Levis was the solution at quarterback. You're finding out he is not the solution, right? Unless he surprises us. None of us can foresee a bounce back that it would take for him at the end of the year for everybody to say, okay, you've got the quarterback. I'm not seeing that right now.
Well,
so where can you go? This is where it's not all Rand's fault, but I don't know that any GM, you would have to be a wizard to dig out of this. Am I wrong? Or you'd have to get completely lucky, and next year you have a top 5 pick and you draft Jaden Daniels or CJ Stroud, right? That's the other way that you could speed this whole thing up. Fair to say?
It certainly helps.
Yeah.
Your first-round picks from 2020, 2021, and 2022 are Isaiah Wilson, Caleb Farley, and Treylon Burks. You're getting 0. And that has 0 to do with Rand Carthon. Nothing. How do you overcome that? Those are just the first-round picks.
615-737-1025. We'll continue to take your calls and texts.
I mean, I want to know. Tell me where I'm wrong. But with this autopsy or assessment of the roster, you tell me what you would have done if you're Rand what you would have done differently.
That's a
What-
good question.
What did they do that was so dumb and or to use somebody's word, incompetent? What were the incompetent moves?
I would love to hear from our listeners on that very question.
And
615.
don't come on here and say they should have kept Derrick Henry and Ryan Tannehill and Byard and have the 35-year-old.
They're just
team.
being an old ass team right, now,
right.
basically.
I mean, bring back D. Mace and Javon Curse.
Exactly.
And,
Might as well.
yeah.
Derek can still go.
Eddie George.
Yeah, bring back Eddie too. After knee replacement, bring him on back too.
Derek looks as young as he did 15 years ago.
Yeah, but that don't mean I can run an out route.
You know what they say? Well, I can't say it on air, but you know what they say. 615-737-1025. Based on what Willie has laid out for us, what would you have done differently if you were Ran Carthon and you inherited what Willie laid out? And again, we want to emphasize, because this is something that consistently gets lost in translation in this conversation. You can point out these things and say, Ran Carthon has not done a good job as Titans general manager. It's not a either or scenario. John Robinson is partially culpable in this, and so is Ran Carthon. I want to make that abundantly clear. 615-737-1025. Willie Donick, Derek Mason, Adam Vingan, 1025-1063. The Game. D. Mace, Vingan, and Donick, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Willie solicited your responses. He laid out the situation that the Titans find themselves in from a roster standpoint and asked you, what would you have done in Ran Carthon's situation? We have a couple of calls we'll get to. A lot of the texts, unsurprisingly, have a similar theme. The Titans don't have a right tackle.
Okay. And that would turn their record into what?
That's a good question. I do not pretend
I'll grant you that they could do better there, but okay, there's one like that, but that's going to solve everything. There's a mound of things that they've got. You have no idea who your quarterback's going to be in 2 years right now. Zero. Right? Who's going to be quarterbacking this team in 2 years as you're on the verge of going into the new stadium?
I have
Somebody
no idea.
that is not in uniform for them right now, unless it is a miracle bounce back and Will Levis comes back and does something that we have not seen yet.
That's the question I want to know. That's a good question.
So you have that along with a list of about 5 guys, maybe, that you are going to carry with you over the next 2 or 3 years.
So I would love to know this, and I'm sure there is a statistical way to look at this. Let's just take league average right tackle, because I don't know every team's right tackle. I don't pretend to know every team's right tackle.
Mhm.
But let's say we took the definition of a league average right tackle, PFF grade, whatever, and plopped him in at right tackle in front of all of the other players who have played right tackle for the Titans this season, which we all concede has not been good.
No, it's been
If
awful.
you plop league average right tackle and everything else plays out the same, how many more wins do the Titans have this year? One?
Well,
Maybe.
Maybe you could get. I mean, they've been close in a lot of
Right.
games, right? So maybe a couple. But what in the big picture, they're 1-6, right?
Yes.
If their record was 3-4, would you feel that much better about this list I just gave you?
Not really.
For 2 years from now and 3 years from now, not really, right? Unless it was because Levis was giving you a lot of hope, or somebody else like a Jaquan Jackson or a Tajay Spears was really showing that this is a needle mover. Who are the needle movers on the team?
We mentioned this a couple of weeks ago when we talked about hopeless teams. That I think was Bill Barnwell wrote the story for ESPN.com, and he mentioned the Giants as one of, as well as the Titans, among others, in these hopeless team categories. But to your point, Willie, who do the Giants have that is a significant needle mover, or appears to be a significant needle mover? Malik Neighbors. And that is a player that you can look at among the ruin that is the New York Giants and say, at least that guy looks like someone who can help lead us back to where we need to go. Based on everything you've read, there is not a player on the Titans that qualifies as that.
No, and you're hoping that Latham would be that equivalent someday, but I don't think you've seen immediate needle-moving stuff yet. He's been good. It's encouraging, but he's got a long way to go.
Kevin is on our phone line, driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. Willie, Kevin is going to take a stab at answering your question. Kevin, thank you for waiting. Please go ahead.
All right, how y'all doing, fellas?
Good, thank you.
What I think they could do is the Titans have never, since '99, they got away from going after the direct playmakers. And I think if they took a stab at just taking a chance, since they're really not getting a lot out of Simmons, they're not getting a lot out of Landry. But I'm sure there's a team that'll give them a first-round draft pick for both of those guys. If they can get 3 first-round draft picks, and say, going into this draft, hey, you know what? We don't have a quarterback. We don't have a defensive tackle, and we don't have a wide receiver. We got to get 3 playmakers that can come in and we can build this team around. If they go into the draft and get that would set them up for success. I'll leave it with you.
Thank you, Kevin.
I mean, identifying playmakers via the draft, that's what every franchise tries to do each and every year. Unfortunately for the Tennessee Titans, it hadn't in the last 5 years, let's just say, they failed more times than they've passed in regards to finding legitimate playmakers that are going to last for this team, or they're going to play into a second contract. They don't have many of these guys on this roster within the last 3 to 4 or 5 years that are now on second contracts with this team, and that is discouraging as a former player, and I'm sure it's discouraging as a fan base. So, but this is a joint effort. And when I say a joint effort, it was the past and the present that put them right where they are at now. It was a joint effort by John Robinson and now by Ran Carthon that has put the Tennessee Titans in a position that they're in. But we cannot ignore. I think we've become a society of, oh, let's just forget about the past. Let's not think about the past. Let's just worry about right now. But in order to worry about right now, you got to understand why you got to this point. And I don't think people nowadays they don't want to do that. They want to, conveniently, forget what happened in a sense. And they want to put all the blame on the guy or girl that is at the helm now. And I get it. I understand it. But if you want the problem fixed, you got to understand why you got to this point and then work your way from there. And the Tennessee Titans have gotten to this point because of failed draft picks. I don't know what better way to tell you. Failed draft picks. That's like I tell my son when he was in school, because he graduated from college in May, that your first year sets you up for year 2, year 3, and year 4. Your first year. So whatever you do that first year, set a good foundation, because then you can work from there. And he understood that. And he said it. He and my daughter set damn good foundations their first year, and it led them into graduating with honors. Well, the Titans didn't do that. And now they're playing catch up. But don't nobody want to look at, the foundation of why they are in the position that they're in now. It started because of failed draft picks. And they have not been able. People think that going out and get a few free agents will cure all the remedies. That's like saying you failed 2 years of your college career. You were a D student, and then all of a sudden you get a B on one exam. Your grade point ain't changed. You got to consistently build on it for you to see the fruit of what you're doing. People don't want to understand that, and I don't know why. So I'm tired of talking to y'all about it. Either y'all know it or you don't know it. And if you know it, you should be understanding of it. I'm not saying dismiss all blame for Ran Carthon.
No,
I am not saying that.
And I'm willing to grant that the right tackle could have been better. They didn't. They had a plan for it, but it obviously has blown up and been awful beyond belief. Like Nicholas Petit-Frere's crumbling from his rookie year, where he wasn't great, but he looked like, okay, this guy could be a starter. This could be serviceable. Like you said, league average. I think they thought, okay, here's a guy that could give us maybe some league average in his third year in the league, still young, room to grow, got a good offensive line developer. It's blown up. He has been beyond bad. So you can play revisionist history and say they should have used the millions of dollars and gotten somebody else. There's no guarantee that guy would have been any better. When you go shopping for free agents, you get overpaid veterans who can be the right solution. But if you're relying too much on that, you're going to get mediocrity more than anything else. But I'll grant you that hasn't gone well. Rand doesn't have enough hits in his batting average. He hasn't done well since he's been there. But I think D-Mace just went into the impassionate speech, which he's given many times.
And did I yell people? I just want to make sure.
You were under control.
I was under control. Thank you.
But you have to understand what he inherited and what he didn't inherit. And what would you have done differently that would change and make you feel better about where it's going the next.
They
2 or
don't
3
know
years.
what they would have done differently, Willie. They don't. They keep coming up with the right tackle. Okay,
and
I
then you're
give
coming
you
with
the
something
right
radical,
I
like
give
you're
you the
going to
right
get a first
tackle.
rounder for Landry and a first rounder for Simmons. Then you have a gigantic hole in your defensive line.
Exactly. It's like,
But I don't think you could get that. I don't think you can get a
no,
first
you're
rounder
not
for
gonna,
Landry.
You're not going to get a
No.
first rounder for Landry just because of his age. But again, I do believe that Titan fans that support this team understands why they are in the position that they are in. But for some reason, y'all want to sort of gloss over that. And I don't know why. I really don't, because if draft picks would have been better, maybe John Robinson would have still had his job. She still would have been GM for this team. But they fire people for a reason, okay? They don't just fire people because everything is going great. You know, the future looks great with this person. You're not firing that person because of that. You're firing that person because of what they have done, and you don't see it getting any better. That's why they fired John Robinson, because of the failed draft picks, and they didn't see it getting any better. And then the 1 year, you know, you hire a new GM well into the process of drafting, and he's basically just in the room, you know, listening to everybody. And I sat on this radio station, or listened in my car, or went on X, and what was told to me is, this really is not Ran Carthon's team. He's really not the GM. All this stuff was being said, and fans agreed with it. Y'all agreed with it. But now it's Ran Carthon's fault. I'm not dissolving him of all what's going on. But y'all can't sit here and say that, oh, he wasn't GM his first year. It was really Vrabel. But then now blame him for that draft that he wasn't the GM for. Come on, make it make sense, people. Really make it make sense, because I heard more than one time, and I listened very carefully. I heard more than one time people say, well, he's really not the GM. He really want to play GM. And this guy's really running the team. If that is indeed the case, then why are you blaming him for last year's draft picks?
Quickly, let's get to Clayton on our phone line, driven by Wilson County Hyundai.com. Clayton, thank you for waiting. Please go ahead.
Hey, appreciate it, man. First time calling in. D-Mace, I appreciate all the good years as you put in for the Titans. Those were the good times. Appreciate that.
You're welcome.
But Nashville,
thank you.
Nashville's such a melting pot. I've lived here 36 years, man. It's my whole life so far. So there's so many people that aren't from here that it just seems that they don't care about the Titans. There's few and far in between of people who've lived here since the Titans have, came to Nashville, like myself. I'm a ride and die Titans fan, good or bad. But to try to answer your question, I don't think some of these SEC quarterbacks or college quarterbacks are ready for the NFL, and I'm not exactly sure the year that they draft the quarterback from college and they expect them to start and play and be a big impact right out of the gate, and some of them aren't ready for that. Some of the better quarterbacks sat and learned behind a veteran. I would have much rather, even if we still drafted Levis, I would have kept Tannehill and let him learn behind Tannehill, who was a good veteran for us at, times, line with the crap. He couldn't do nothing about that. He got injured. Levis got injured behind the same line. I mean, that I don't know what exactly we could have done, but some of these quarterbacks just aren't ready for the NFL, and it just seems very apparent. Some of them need to sit and learn.
Thank you, Clayton, for the call.
Thank you. Appreciate it. I mean,
which is what they did.
Yeah, they tried to. Yeah. They wanted him to sit and wait, but then obviously Tannehill gets hurt. And I said this last year, and I stick with it. I don't think they really had a plan for Will Levis because they didn't expect him to play. I guess if you did have a plan, the plan was for him to sit, but he had to play. And he tantalized you and fooled you by the 4-touchdown game he had, versus the Atlanta Falcons here. And then the comeback he had in Miami. So he teased us all a little bit, and they sold that, and we bought it. I don't want to get food like that again.
Fool me once.
Shame
That
on
is
you.
that is a big
Fool me
part of
twice,
this
shame on me.
equation. The reaction that we're getting, right? The reaction that's going on is partially because they probably should have tempered expectations better than they did.
Yep.
615-737-1025. We'll continue to take your calls and texts on this because we have a lot of them at 615-737-1025. Willie Donick, Derek Mason, Adam Vingan, 1025-1063. The Game. D. Mace, Vingan, and Donick, 1025, 1063 the game. Willie Donick, Derek Mason, and Adam Vingan here with you. We are broadcasting from the Busy Bee Plumbing, Heating, and Air Conditioning Game Nashville studios, home of the $99 yearly Beehive membership, where the buzz is always about great service. And we've got multiple calls to get to, and we will do that. But first, Derek, we need a response from you.
Give it to me.
So 7 minutes ago.
Exactly.
7 minutes ago, from the @Jared Stillman Twitter account.
Or X.
It'll always be Twitter to me, damn it.
Me too. Don't worry about it.
@Jared Stillman. So apparently, @DMason85 has decided that Rand Carthon wasn't GM of a draft that he held a press conference after and admonished the media for criticizing the picks. Convenient, says Jared. Derek, your response.
All I am going to say is this: just honor your words. Honor the words that came out of your mouth. Okay. I go back to what I was hearing. Okay. And these are from some of the same people that now says, oh, Rand was the GM last year. That he really wasn't the GM. He liked playing GM, but he really wasn't the GM. Those came out of people's mouths. Okay. And when it comes out of your mouth and you try to convince me that he's not the GM, he's not the guy, but then all of a sudden now it's convenient to make him the GM. I know what you said. I know what y'all said, that he's really not running it. Listen, take your pick. I don't care. I'm still going to sleep at night. I still got, what I have, so whether he's here or gone, it's not going to make me any mind. It's really not. But I want y'all to make up your mind. Either he was the GM or he wasn't. Because I heard several times, he's playing GM. He's really not the GM. Well, if that's the case, who is? Vrabel? Okay, Vrabel was the GM.
So
okay.
Let me play devil's advocate here, because this is where I think one part of Jared's argument is. And if I'm getting it wrong, God knows I'm going to hear about it. But there was a perception.
Yes.
During the first year, well, really the only year, of Rand Carthon and Mike Vrabel, there was a perception that Mike Vrabel was running the show, that Rand Carthon was, for lack of a better term, an empty suit, that he was general manager by title only.
And I heard that a lot.
Right, you
too,
did hear that a lot. Right. Here's where I think Jared's argument is, because he has mentioned this recently. There was a story written by our colleague Joe Rexrode and Diana Rossini in The Athletic following the Titans' firing of Mike Vrabel. And if I recall correctly, there was a portion of that story where it was reported that Mike Vrabel went to ownership and wanted more personnel power and was denied that request. So therefore, Mike Vrabel was not in charge because, according to Joe Rexrode and Diana Rossini, Mike Vrabel's attempt to gain more power was denied. So because we know that now, therefore Rand Carthon was in charge. That's the argument.
And I can.
And my phone is vibrating. I can. God only knows who this is.
And I can. And you're right. But what I will say is this: if you have insiders, no matter who they are, if you have insiders and your insider is telling you one thing and then you are sort of putting that out, that makes one believe that, okay, that may be the case, because I don't know. So when you say he's playing GM, he's really not the GM. Okay, if that's your stance, stay on it. Stand on it. I may be trying to convince you otherwise, but if that's the way you're thinking, then okay. But now conveniently change it when things are not going well. I don't operate from that standpoint. If I said something then, it's going to be now. If I made a mistake, I will admit I made a mistake. I didn't look at that the way I should have looked at it in regards to the Tennessee Titans. But when I'm being told, hey, listen, he's really not the GM. He's really not, he's just playing GM. And this is, you're getting it because they're getting it from somebody in the know. What am I supposed to believe then? I'm only going by what you're telling me. As many times I may try to debunk it, eventually it's just like, okay, if you say that's the case, then okay, I'm gonna let that be the case. But the minute I want to say, okay, if that is indeed the case, his tenure, now that Mike Vrabel has been fired, his tenure starts with me. Only me. I don't care what you think or you think. Only me. His tenure starts now. What he does from this draft moving forward will determine whether he has a job long-term or not.
And I would add this. I think I made this point.
That's just rational thinking right there.
I don't think that Rand Carthon can sit here and make a list of these are all the great moves I've made since I've been here. And Chad Brinker would be the same. He doesn't have a lot. They need some good things to happen here.
Of course.
I would argue that because of what they inherited and the mess that's in front of them, I'm not sure there is a GM that can dig out of it in time to save his job. I think that is the biggest challenge that they have, is they don't have a lot to trade right now. Like, that's why it's almost better for them to lose and have a high pick that they can wield into other picks or have the chance to pick somebody special. You see what I'm saying? Like,
no,
like Robinson, like Barry Trotz inherited, because David Poile was responsible and gave him a lot of draft capital and resources and cap space. That allowed Barry Trotz to come in with something to work with. That's all I'm trying to say with Rand Carthon. He inherited problems that people didn't really see coming because the team had won some games, but he doesn't have much to work with. John Robinson inherited the first pick in the draft that he could go wheel and deal, and a quarterback that was in place, even though he didn't turn out to be anything great. And then maybe the most brilliant move that John Robinson made was the trade for Ryan Tannehill. That was a huge game changer. So John Robinson did a really good job, but he was going to experience this even if they kept him, because you cannot go 0 for 3 in the drafts and have your best players in 3 drafts be Dylan Radins and Roger McCreary.
Scott is in Hendersonville. He has been waiting patiently on our phone line driven by Wilson County Hyundai.com. Scott, thank you for waiting. Please go ahead.
This is going to be a twofer. I'm going to refute D-Mace while also getting my complaint out. I don't know who these insiders are, but I do know that after last year's draft, Rand Carthon took credit for it. He took credit for drafting Skoronski and talked about all these other GMs that called him and said, "Oh, great pick. I was about to pick him at, a pick or two later." I know that. So if Carthon's taking credit for it, then he can take the blame when it doesn't work out. And that's my major beef here and it goes back to Robinson. It goes back to the Isaiah Wilson draft. They have reached and drafted guys 10, 15 picks too high instead of trading down. They should have traded down every year. They were thin. They had a lot of good players 4 or 5 years ago, but the roster still wasn't deep. They had a few holes on the bottom of the roster. They should have been trading down. And every year there's more holes and more holes and more holes because they keep whiffing and they keep reaching on guys. McCreary is probably the only one they got right. Radins, no one was going to draft him at the top of the second round. And we can just go down the list. And I'm convinced that Latham was a bad pick because they could have had him at 17 instead of 7.
Well, hold on for a second. How do you know they could have had him at 17? Like, seriously, how do you?
No.
You can't. There are a lot of people. No. I want to stop you right there, and I'm gonna let you finish. I'm gonna let you finish. There are teams that had him rated their top tackle. There are teams in the NFL that had him rated the top tackle in the national in that year's draft. So again,
who were those teams? Derek?
I can't tell you. Okay,
well, I'll tell you one.
I'm gonna go back
because we had him on our show. Steve Hutchinson said the Seahawks had Latham ahead of all the other tackles. There's one.
Well, here's what I know.
Came on our show and said
instead of taking Latham at 7, they could have traded out of 7 and gotten 2 first round.
How do you know that?
I hear that all the time. They had all these trades on the table.
Okay, let me stop it here.
Okay, go ahead there.
How do you know that? That's what I want to understand. How do you know that? And then how do you know no one else, no other team? Willie just gave you one team, but you said there was no other team outside of the Tennessee Titans that had J.C. Latham as their number 1 tackle. That's what you're saying. When Willie just gave you one from a Hall of Famer, we had him number one on our board. And I guarantee you, if I was to go talk to more GMs or more personnel individuals, they would say, yeah. Some would say, no, we didn't have him on the top. Some would say they didn't even have the kid that the Chargers drafted. They probably didn't have him number one. They probably had someone else number one. But to sit here and say no one other than the Titans, that's misinformation that you're receiving. It really is. Because were you in all 31 of those rooms when they were drafting or putting their draft together? No, you weren't. No, you were not. And no one else came out and said, you know what? We didn't have Latham as a top 10 pick. No one came out and said that. But the people that we have talked to said, yeah, you know what? He was our number one tackle coming out. So that makes two teams. That makes the Tennessee Titans and the Seattle Seahawks, two teams that had Latham rated their number one offensive tackle. That's all I'm saying. For you to say no one did it, they could have got 2 first-round draft picks. How do you know that? And then you go off and start saying this other stuff. But then how do you know? Seriously, how do you know that no one else would have drafted him, or no one else had them in the top 15 or top 10, and they could have got him at 17? I'm pretty sure that had you not drafted J.C. Latham, you probably would have got a tackle. But you wouldn't have gotten J.C. Latham or those other tackles. You know why? Because there started to be a run on tackles.
Howie is in Houston. He's been
all
waiting
the way from Houston?
Yes, it says Howie Houston. So Howie is in Houston. He's been waiting patiently. Howie, thank you for calling. Please go ahead.
Yeah, what's up, guys? Hey, I love the show. That's right. I'm in Houston. We are in a drought, and that's a good thing because it's humid in Houston in the summertime, so we are loving our winter. So I'm thankful. Anyway, I just see a bigger issue here with the breakdown of the Titans. I would love to get all three of your thoughts on this. And that today we see that the Colts benched Richardson.
Yes.
We see that Pittsburgh went away from Fields. Going back to the Titans before Tannehill, we saw how they benched Mariota. And what I just keep seeing, even with Levis, and maybe I'm wrong, Derek, have you seen this too on the sideline? Whenever these guys get benched, there's like this peace and relief that comes to them. It's like, oh, okay, I'm done for now. And so my question is, if that's true, if you guys see like these quarterbacks coming to the NFL, they're kind of relieved when they finally get the sideline. Who do you see as the problem in quarterbacks being thrown out and going through a carousel? Is it the fans and their over expectations to win in order to come to the stadium, or is it ownership and their desire to get that guy to win game one? And if they don't, then we start all over again with all the drama, the high expectations, and basically seeing things bottom out like we're seeing again with Levis and everything coming down from that this year. What do you guys see on this? If this makes sense, and I would love to hear your thoughts. Thanks, man. Love the show.
Thank you, Howie.
From Houston. We appreciate that.
I hope he doesn't mind that I'm one of those people that swallows my H's. So it's Howie from Houston. It's not Howie from Houston. I hope Howie doesn't mind that.
I'm sure he doesn't.
Please go ahead.
I don't think it's so much a relief from these quarterbacks. I just think it gives them one. No quarterback wants to be benched. No player wants to be benched. But it does give you a time to reflect and sort of see it from a different point of view. I don't think it's so much of 100% relief. I'm sure there is some to it, meaning, whatever the situation was, now I won't be to blame for it. But it's still, I would rather be out there in a sense. But sometimes you have to, in these quarterback situations, sometimes you have to take a few steps back to take something forward, whether it be Indianapolis, Carolina, or here in Nashville. You got to, in this league, you got to find out very quickly what you have in a quarterback, because if you don't, you can find yourself falling further and further behind in the race to win a Super Bowl. Because if you don't have a starting quarterback, you don't have a chance. If you don't have a quarterback, that franchise guy, your chances of winning the Super Bowl or going to the Super Bowl is very slim.
By the way, before we get to Paul from Nashville on our phone line, there was another wide receiver trade in the NFL. The Carolina Panthers have traded Deontay Johnson to the Baltimore Ravens.
Go Ravens!
Yes, they had him another
For
playmaker.
I wonder what the return.
It is a pick flop with pick flop.
Swapping a pick.
Adam Schefter said a pick flop. I've never heard that. I've heard pick swap, not pick flop. The Panthers are getting a 5th round pick for Deontay Johnson and a 6th round pick. So Deontay Johnson, now a member of the Baltimore Ravens, traded from the Carolina Panthers. A 5th round pick for the Panthers, Deontay Johnson, and a 6th round pick for the Ravens.
Moving up in the draft, however many slots that is, from the 6th to the 5th. Interesting.
The AFC loading up on receiver trades. We've seen Deontay Johnson move. We've seen Amari Cooper move, Devontae Adams, and, of course, DeAndre Hopkins. So a wide receiver arms race in the AFC. Now we'll get to Paul from Nashville on our phone line, driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. Paul, thank you for waiting. Please go ahead.
Okay, guys, I think I can answer Willie's question without having D-Mace yell at me, or I'll give it a shot. I've never worked for an NFL franchise. I'm neither ignorant nor arrogant enough to say that I could pick players better than Rand. I don't have a team of scouts working for me, giving me that kind of information. But there is one thing that I would do differently, and that is I think the dishonesty with the fan base is what bothers most people. I think coming on and saying the ball didn't bounce our way, or coming on and saying we got everything we wanted out of this draft or free agency from pick 1 to 7, that is what drives people insane. And I think that is what gives you less grace for what John Robinson did that he inherited when he comes out and says, oh, I got everything I wanted. We're in the right direction, instead of saying, hey, everybody, this is going to take a hot minute to get it right. I don't think, as someone who pays as a Nashville native and pays for tickets and pays taxes here, that pays for these things, that when someone hands me chocolate pudding and says it's chocolate pudding, but it's feces, like I know what it is. Just say what you've got. That stuff is what gets on everyone's nerve. And I think that we all live in a world where we can sniff out BS pretty quickly. That is what I would do differently. And I think people would feel differently about Rand if they didn't have to hear that kind of stuff.
I agree with you 100%. And I think I've said that all along.
Nobody wants poop pudding, let me tell you. Nobody wants poop pudding.
I feel like Rand Carthon probably should have been out getting his message out, connecting with fans, and reiterating the theme. You guys will remember this. You won't, Adam, because it was before you joined us. But when they fired Mike Vrabel and we had Paul Kuharsky on, I asked Paul Kuharsky that day. So this is the day after they fired Mike Vrabel. I said, should the Titans say that they are in rebuilding? So from the day that they fired him, I have been saying that the rebuilding thing, even if you don't want to use that language and you're careful on how you message it, that should have been the approach. I agree. I think that would have been, and I'm not saying it in hindsight, right? I think a lot of people, when they say, well, they could have traded down to 17, or they could have traded the 2nd round pick for 3 more picks. You're saying this in hindsight, and you don't even know if that's 100% true. What I'm telling you is what I said from the start. I do think that they gave a little bit of a false sense of security that they could be more competitive when you couldn't know that. You couldn't know how Levis was going to play. You couldn't know that all of the free agents you brought in, all these new players, were going to get you where you wanted to go. That was a tough needle to thread. They would have been much better off saying, I'm not really sure what's going to happen. This is a new era. We've got a new quarterback. We've got a young coach, and we don't know what's going to happen. But we are going to try to build a new team after we just went through a window where we had a lot of success. We won a lot of games. We got a couple of division titles. We got to an AFC championship game. We fell just short of what the ultimate goal is. And now we've got to start over here. And I don't know what that's going to look like, but we're going to work hard to make it happen.
And I understand. I get what you're saying, as well as the caller. But again, here's the deal. For one, let me address quickly the ball bouncing our way. We know what that is.
That was a mistake.
No, it may have been wording, but we're not dumb. Okay, we don't have dumb listeners. We don't have dumb callers. Okay, so we know in the context of what he's talking about, what he exactly means. He doesn't mean the ball literally, like the ball didn't bounce our way. That's not what he meant. Okay, just understand. I want y'all to understand that first before we even dive into anything else. Understand that when he says, and maybe it was the wrong wording, but me as a football guy, I know exactly what he means. And if I, as a football guy, am telling y'all what he exactly means, then that's what it's, hey, listen. Or we threw the ball and then went to Detroit instead of one of our guys. That's not what he means. He just means things like we're close in games, but we're not good enough. Basically, that's what he's saying. We are not good enough. He can't say we are not good enough, okay? Even John Robinson didn't say the bottom half of my roster is not good. What John did was try to sell you on, we got some good players, and we believe we drafted some good players. So when Ran Carthon, listen to me very closely, people. When Ran Carthon says the ball didn't bounce our way, what he's really saying is we're not good enough to make the mistakes that we're making and overcome them. That's all he's saying. And we have smart listeners. So listen through the words and see what he's actually saying. And then now let me get on the draft really quick. There's no GM in America. No GM, even the GMs in college right now. That's what they call them. There's no GM in sports that's going to go into a draft after the draft and say, man, damn, we didn't get nobody we wanted. We just drafted people just to be drafting them. We didn't get the guy we wanted. He went to that team. That guy went to that team. Man, we didn't get the guy we wanted. What they are going to say, which Ran Carthon said, which any other GM would have said, we identified positions that we needed. We identified those individuals, and if we had a chance to draft them, we were going to draft them, which they felt good about the guys that they drafted based upon, whether it was times they ran at the combine or film or interviews. They felt at that moment that, hey, listen, we got the guys that we wanted. Now, did it work out? No, it didn't, but you can't fault him for saying, listen, we went into the draft, we identified some areas, and we got the guys that we believe can help us. What is so hard to believe? What is so hard to hear in that? That's what I'm trying to figure out. Like, again, we are a country of selective hearing. We hear what we want to hear, okay? And it's cool if that's the way you want to be. But again, what GM in America would have said, we didn't get what we wanted, we got a bad team, this and that? No, they tried to tell you in wording. But for some reason, y'all don't want to hear or see through what he's really saying. Listen, the ball didn't bounce our way, which translate to we're not a good enough team, okay, yet to overcome the mistakes that we have. And you know what? He is right. Because if he comes out and says we're not a good enough team, that team's going to quit on him.
615-737-1025. Wonderful participation from all of you. Thank you for that. Coming up next, our weekly conversation with Vanderbilt head football coach Clark Lea. We'll chat with Clark next. Derek Mason and Adam Vingan, 102.5, 106.3, The Game.
Happy Tuesday, everyone. Listen, we have just finished up the 8th week, I believe, going on the 9th week of NFL football right now. So I know you're going to be betting. We got a game coming up in a couple of days here. Well, tomorrow. So if you're going to be doing all your betting, which I know you will be, then you need to do it with our partners, Zen Sports, the new sports book in Tennessee that is bringing sports betting to a whole new level. When you sign up for Zen Sports, you'll automatically earn up to $100, no danger wager. If your first bet loses, you'll be reimbursed for the amount of your bet up to $100. And now that football season has started and it's going, Zen Sports has launched their revamped betting platform for both college football and the NFL. And what's better, with their new look, Zen Sports will be offering daily promotions, including boost, same game parlays, no danger wager, and so much more. Zen Sports also offers a one-of-a-kind VIP program. If you qualify, you earn monthly cops at sporting events, concerts, and even sportbook bonuses. The VIP program is by invite only. So if you feel that your Zen Sports play qualifies for the VIP consideration, check out the program details and apply at zensports.com/VIP. So what are you waiting for, football fans? Start betting with Zen Sports, where you will receive true odds on all parlays and an enhanced user experience for all. Get going and download their app at zensports.com today. That's Zen Sports, where betting just got better. And remember, gambling problems, call 1-800-889-9789. Terms and conditions apply. Must be 21 years or older to bet here in Tennessee.
D-Mace, Vingen and Donick, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Derek Mason and Adam Vingen. Willie Donick had to step out to take care of some personal business. He's upset that it's going to interfere with our weekly conversation with Vanderbilt head football coach Clark Lea. Clark, thank you for joining us as always. Although your team did come up short this past weekend against Texas, what I was most struck by listening to you after the game and listening to your players is that there are no more moral victories for your program because of what you've been able to accomplish this season. Your players went into that game against Texas, expecting to win. I mean, that is a powerful thing, I imagine, for a coach to be able to foster within a football program, considering where that may have been when you first returned to Vanderbilt to where it is now. How would you describe that journey?
Well, it's been a long one. And I think, obviously as a competitor, you never want to have a situation where anything other than accomplishing the mission is acceptable or okay. I think one of the great challenges in a season is that you have to see it as, is one journey, not really 12 independent journeys. And so in that context, you can learn from both good results and bad results. And so there are things from Saturday that we can look at and say, we did these things well. And then also to shift, say, but we need to do these things better to get the outcome we want. That can help us strengthen in our next performance. But that's our approach. But certainly we don't accept finishing close is something that we celebrate or we think is in any sense accomplishing the mission. This is our mission's winning, and this is a team that takes great pride in the pursuit of that, and is very disappointed when we fall short. But if you look at the game, what gives me peace of mind about our competitive makeup, and this is where this team separates from the others I've fielded here, there's no matter what the flow of the game tells them, the doubt that might have existed in the past is eliminated. I mean, we went at half and came back out and fought tooth and nail and scratched our way back into it. And you only do that against a team as talented as Texas and as well coached as Texas, if there's a deeply ingrained belief that, we're here to win and we have everything we need to win. And unfortunately the clock ran out on us. And so the lesson is how do we play a little more opportunistic early in the game to allow ourselves to close it out at the end.
Clark, you're preparing to face Auburn this weekend. Last season, New Mexico State went to Auburn, won 31-10. Diego Pavia had 3 touchdowns. Considering the connective tissue between the New Mexico State program and your own, do you look at film from that New Mexico game last year as you game plan for Auburn this weekend?
I don't. I've watched that game a number of times. I did that as I was evaluating our program, at the end of the season last year, and also as I was evaluating Tim Beck as a play caller. But this is a different team. It's a different Auburn team, and we have pretty well ingrained systems in place here that we're gonna adjust to fit to best attack and defend against Auburn, but we're not going to deviate too far from who we are and what we do. So this is about how we adjust and adapt our strategy to go play a great game. But more than anything else, we need to bring our identity and the discipline, respect, and spirit that defines us as a good team. And we need to play a good game, because despite the adversity that Auburn's faced this year, they're coming off a great road win where I think they've really established an identity as a team that centers on an aggressive defense and a dynamic, explosive rushing attack. And when you look at their film, I mean, there's talent all over the field. They have explosive receiver skill. This is as good of a backfield as we've faced. Their offensive line's physical. Defensively, they're big, they're strong, they're fast, they're physical. And all this factors into a special teams group that's really, really good. So it's a good team. It's a road environment, a tough road environment in the SEC. This one will require us to play our best game, and hopefully the things that we've learned as we've gone through the season we can apply those and give ourselves the best chance.
We'll talk with Vanderbilt's head football coach, Clark Lea. Now, Coach, I know Diego was banged up a bit in this past game, but you said he will be underneath center for you against Auburn. How do you protect him, knowing that that he is dealing with some ailments and he is a big part of, what the offense has to do and what they are able to do each and every week? Is there a way you can protect him without taking away his physical brand of football?
Well, he is banged up, and obviously he's tough as nails, and practiced today, but the accumulation of the season is catching up to him a little bit, and that's not going to deter him at all. Mm-hmm. I mean, Diego's a true warrior, but inevitably in this league, that's the nature of the week in, week out grind. As far as protecting him, I feel like we can design the best mechanisms for protection as coaches, teach them and train them, meaning like, how are we protecting certain looks from their defense, pass protecting? How are we trying to take hits off him in the pocket? When it comes to our run game, there's certainly ways to design, determined gives or plays where, we create the leverage we need to get the ball in the perimeter and out of his hands. And yet our offense flows best through him. And so there's the balance between looking for opportunities just to take a couple of hits off him, but also needing him to play the game how he knows how to play it, for us to be as successful as we can be. And I mean, we can aspire to do anything. At the end of the day, Diego will have the ball in his hands, and he'll make decisions based off what he feels like puts us in the best position to win. And what I know about him is there's never going to be a point in time where he chooses to protect himself rather than lay it all on the line for the sake of the team.
Now, you guys were 3 for 12 on third down, and in this business that the longer you can stay on the field, the better it is for your team and mainly your offense. How do you remedy that? Being better than a 3 and 12 team, and then on the other side, the defense getting off the field on third down.
Yeah, I think first of all, to talk, when you look at the Texas game and you think about our plan to win and the things we needed to do, possession time was a critical part of that, because that's a really explosive offense, and it's a defense that's very, very good. I mean, that is as good of a defensive front as I've seen probably since 2021 Georgia. And in order to find yards against the front like that, you've got to wear them out, and wearing them out means you need to stay on schedule and keep them on the field. And that's how you can open up opportunities late in the game to maybe hit some explosive plays and really kind of hammer home some of the base points of your identity that are so important to success. I think, part of the Alabama game, that was the formula, where that's a really skilled defense that we were able to keep on the field for a really long time. And by the time the end of the game came around, we were the more physical team. So, being on schedule, finding and creating the room early and being happy with 3 or 4 yard gains early, so that hopefully those 3 or 4 yard gains become 6 to 10 yards later on in the game. And then, the more you possess the ball, the more opportunities you have to get to your shots. And so at some point, we can certainly go methodically down the field, but at some point we need to cover some ground in chunks, and snap accumulation is a big part of that. Defensively, there's a few things, a couple of third downs that I'd like to have back where they had some run tendencies across the 50. And, I felt like in terms of game flow and then just the distance of the third downs, we stayed in some of our sub package, and they were able to get some runs on us that converted. Obviously we got beat on the early man third down for a touchdown, which is a fundamental technical thing that we have to improve upon. But I felt like, we measured third down performance in 3 ways defensively. The first is, 20% of the snaps, the total snaps for the opponent, need to be third down. So if you want to be a good third down team, you have to get the opponent to third down. We met that mark, meaning we played well enough on first and second down to force third downs. The second measure is, we want the average yards a game to be 7 or more yards. And that puts us in an advantageous position to get off the field. And we met that mark too. A lot of times when you have the statistical measures we did coming out of the game, it's because you played a lot of 3rd and 3s. But that wasn't the case on Saturday. And so the third measure is we want to be at 67% stop rate. And we were short of that. And, the runs hurt, but also little points of execution. And I think some things we can do structurally to help with some of the tendencies we put on film that we'll be looking at and looking to address as we go play against Auburn. So opportunities for us to improve. I think there are elements of that performance that I think we can actually pull from in a positive way, but certainly areas where we need to close the deal on drives and get the ball back to our offense, because the longer those drives extend, the more it challenges our field position, and the field position, being on long fields for our offense isn't a formula to generate points and to create space between us and the opponent.
Vanderbilt head football coach Clark Lea joining us as he does every Tuesday afternoon. Clark, thanks for chatting. Good luck this weekend at Auburn.
Thanks, guys. Y'all take care.
Yep.
Of course. Clark Lea and his Vanderbilt Commodores are on the road this weekend at Auburn. Auburn, by the way, despite being 3-5, 7-point favorites at this moment.
That's odd.
It does seem a bit odd, but Vanderbilt relishes the underdog role, and they've been good at it. But Vanderbilt at Auburn this weekend. We'll wrap up the show next. Derek Mason, Adam Vingan, 102.5, 106.3, The Game.
Mark your calendars. November 9th, the Iron Goddess all-female show is coming to Nashville, brought to you by our friends over at Law Tigers. Meet us at the fairgrounds as female riders from all over the world will be in attendance. Come out and see some of these beautiful custom bikes, from choppers to mini bikes, from cruisers to sports bikes. All makes and models are encouraged to come. Get your tickets now at IronGoddessMotorcycleShow.com. That's IronGoddessMotorcycleShow.com, which is sponsored by Law Tigers. Enjoy a day of live music, vendor village, tasty foods, and so much more. Show off your bike in one of their many competitions and win cash prizes. All spectators are welcome, and kids under 16 are free with paid tickets. So mark your calendar again, November 9th. Get your tickets, IronGoddessMotorcycleShow.com, which is sponsored by Law Tigers. Can't wait to see you there.
D-Mace, Vingan, and Donick, 102.5, 106.3 the game. It's just me and Derek right now. Willie had to step out. He has some important things to do.
And I got a text from one Jared Stillman.
All right, so I just want to preface this.
Okay.
We have about 5 minutes.
Okay. It's quick. It's quick.
Okay.
It's very
because
quick.
I know as well as you do, when Jared blows up your phone while you're doing your show, it's very distracting.
It is very
I'm
distracting.
guilty.
But no, I love it.
I am guilty of doing that to Jared as well. We all do it.
Oh yeah, we do it to one.
Rexro was actually texting me during your take on the ball didn't bounce our way, and he disagreed with you. But we don't have enough time to get into all of this.
I will get into all of that with all of them.
Okay, so what do you want to say to Jared before he comes on the air?
Jared yelled at me.
Yelled at you?
Yes, because he put it all caps.
Oh no.
He yelled at me. He said it was literally about the ball not bouncing their way. Then he said the article.
Okay.
And I am going to read this it may take me about 20 seconds to read this. Okay.
Okay.
The question was, looking at what happened in the first 7 games and building for the last 10, what do you expect from the season, having seen what you've seen? And here's his answer. I expect our guys to continue to play hard, which is what they do. The ball's not round. You don't know which way it's going to bounce. Sometimes it's those couple of opportunities, I don't have my glasses, that we had in the game where we jar the ball loose, but it bounces right back to them. And then on the other side of it, they fumble and they get the ball right back. So you can't predict which way the ball is going to bounce. It's a metaphor. That's why he said you can't predict which way the ball is bouncing. He's right in regards to we're not a good enough team right now to give the ball away to the other team. We're not that good. Why? The ball is not going to bounce back our way because we're not a good roster right now. That's essentially what he's saying. He tied it in with the fumble, but if you read through all of that and you are a football person, you know exactly, and you've been in these rooms and you understand the lingo, you know exactly what he's talking about. I can see where Jared could take that and say the ball, he's talking about the football. I'm not going to argue with him about that. That's his perception. But me as a football guy, being in those rooms, hearing the lingo, I know exactly what he's saying. But I don't fault Jared for saying that or thinking that. I don't. It's him. There we go. Was that 30 seconds? Somewhere around there?
About that.
Okay. Good.
You left us with a couple of minutes to spare. And it's it's been really interesting.
And that's
sitting in this chair now for a month or so, month plus. It's been interesting to get a real pulse of the Titans fan base. And the one thing that I stressed during our exercise with Willie, because I was seeing texts like this, and Jared likes to call mostly you and Willie the Ran Club featuring Adam Vingan, since I'm the one that's facilitating the conversation.
But don't we give both sides of the coin when we're discussing it?
I think that's important. And we used this word yesterday.
Oh, we're the Ran Club. That's all we
are. We're the Ran Club. The word I used yesterday when we were talking about Titans fans being angry is nuance.
Exactly.
And I think it's important to note that 2 things can be true. As general manager of the Tennessee Titans, whether it was 2 years, 1 year, whatever you want to say, since he has had the title of general manager of the Tennessee Titans, Ran Carthon has not done a good enough job, period. End of story. He has not done a good enough job. At the same time, Ran Carthon was put at a disadvantage because of the work that John Robinson did near the end of his tenure. Yes, the Titans were a winning team when he was fired. I'd be curious to know what I would love to go back in time if I could do this. They did not. Let's just say the Titans did not fire John Robinson. Would this team be in as big of a mess? I don't know the answer to that. You said it, that John Robinson was fired at the right time.
Exactly.
Because the team was starting to go downhill.
The answer is no.
The answer is no to what?
Was that a drop, or is that Jared actually chiming in?
It's actually Jared.
Oh my God, Jared! This is not your show.
Hold on, Jared.
This is not your show, Jared.
Are you saying? No, I just want to understand this, Jared. Are you saying that had John Robinson kept the job, the Titans wouldn't have ended up losing the games that they lost last season and the season before that? Is that what you're saying?
They would have beat Jacksonville the week that he got fired, and they wouldn't be the worst team in the
you know what, Jared?
NFL.
You're not going to commandeer our program.
Hey, I'm with Jared on this
you
one.
have 4 hours.
You know what? 9:30 9:30
Oh, my
Sunday morning. I
goodness.
got a lot saved up in the bag for the pregame show,
Oh
Derek.
my
Okay,
goodness.
but you know what? Your show hasn't started yet, so you need to get off the line. You just wait 5 minutes.
John Robinson
before
got
you
fired at the right time. He's
comment-
like, "Whew, I'm
before you
glad."
commandeer another program. Gee, I thought that was a drop, not Jared actually chiming into the program. But Jared is coming up next on 102.5, 106.3. The Game will be back at 11 a.m. tomorrow.
Be love on your people. Have a wonderful and safe Tuesday. Remember, John Robinson was the same guy that got rid of A.J. Brown. Peace.